Hi, this is Lenny Cameron, and I'm here with Marilyn Simon Rothstein to chat about Crazy to Leave You, which is such a funny book. It's the funniest book I've read in quite some time, and I am excited to hear how on earth Marilyn actually gets the funny on the page in the way that she is so blessedly good at. So, Marilyn, welcome and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Lainey. Thank you for inviting me.
So let's just start at the beginning. For folks who won't have heard of this book yet or might not have read it because it just came out, tell them a little bit about Crazy to Leave You. What's the story about? What's the book about?
Well, I happen to have a copy of it right here. Look, is this big enough?
For those on the podcast, Marilyn has a massive poster board that is taking up the entire screen. I love it. Tell folks about the book. If they haven't read it yet, tell them a little bit about Crazy to Leave You.
Okay. I spent my entire life researching Crazy to Leave You, and most of it involved me being in front of the refrigerator. The story is about a 41-year-old, very successful New York advertising executive named Lauren Leo. She has got the world by a string, but she doesn't realize it. And her goal is she wants to meet a guy, get married, have a family. And she winds up dating a guy she kissed behind a bunk at camp when she was 13 years old. And met again at a reunion of the camp years and years later, and decides this is what she has been looking for. And she is obsessed with her weight, so she diets herself down to a size 12. And she's so proud of herself on her wedding day that she's actually thinking of wearing the size tag down the aisle instead of the dress. As she is thinking this, the groom, Eric, texts her sister to say he doesn't want to get married. And she is literally left before the altar. She then has to deal with this. She's no longer calling it the wedding. She's calling it the great humiliation. After I thought up the character of Lauren Leo, and I gave her a size 4 body-shaming mother who would probably paint the kitchen pink to match the sweet and low. And I also gave her a sister who is just way too perfect. I mean, she would annoy you, Lainey. She would annoy me. And I gave her a sister who had renamed herself Margot L'Amour because she became a soap opera star and doesn't come to the wedding, but arrives the next day to sit on Lauren's couch. And it doesn't look like she's leaving until the diet soda runs out. So Lauren is now back to where she started and has to pick herself up. And the story is the story of a woman's strength. And I love writing about strong women. But often I don't think we realize how strong we are until we face something that, we never thought of facing. I mean, she was just plowing straight ahead. I had that in my 2 other books where it's Marcy who's divorcing the Bra King. And she's also in a place where she never thought she'd be because she is in her late 50s and being left for a 22-year-old 34 triple D. So Lauren picks herself up off the ground and gets involved in the advertising business, winds up having her sister there, winds up having her mother tell her little juicy things like, stay on your diet and freeze your eggs. This is the advice. And this is what she goes through. And she goes out and deals with her biggest client, New England Can, which is the biggest manufacturer of porta potties in the world, the #1 John on college campuses, and her boss, who's never seen a skirt he didn't think should be shorter, and plods ahead and makes it through. And if you don't laugh, I will give you the chocolate cake that's in my refrigerator if I don't eat it before I see you.
Well, I will say it made me laugh. But like, where did this idea of like pairing her relationship with food, which is obviously a lifelong struggle,
Mhm.
with this horrible situation she's in and getting married. Like, what made you put those two things together?
Personal experience. Not that I got ditched at the altar because I was married when I was 4, but I have paired, eating with so many things in my life. It's really hard to move forward, and she does move forward.
With a lot of laughs along the way, but part of her arc is dealing with her relationship with food, right? Not just her relationship with people, but her relationship with food. Yeah.
Yes, and a relationship with her family because of that. Like, she always saw her younger sister, the one who's perfect, also she thinks looks perfect,
Right.
and she wants to look like, at one point she said, "I never wore a, bow in my life." Her sister's wearing this dress with this giant bow, and she said, "Not even in my hair, because I thought I might look bad having the bow in my hair." So it's her, we all have our obsessions, and this is her obsession. And she comes to realize that this is what it's all about, and move forward. And it's just a story of realizing you're enough.
I love that. And what was your inspiration? How did you get to this particular story for this book?
I just had a thought about someone being left at the altar, and that's where I went. And I am not an outliner. If I had to outline a book, there would be no book. So I just sit there and I think of things as I go. Like her sister, who's the soap opera star who's been fired. They killed her 3 times on the soap. She kept coming back. And then she wound up not coming back and winds up on Lauren's couch. And she came to me. The book was half written when she came to me. And I just knew, I just loved her. It was like, oh, I love you. And so she is the protagonist. Let's call her best friend, but she's her sister.
And what changed from that first vision when you kind of like got it all on the page to the version that the readers are reading now? Is it completely the same, or is there anything people might be surprised, readers might be surprised to know is different than the first version?
Well, I can't tell you the ending because then I'll ruin it for everybody,
Yeah,
right?
don't do that. Don't do that.
So, not telling you the ending, I think I changed the ending about 10 times. And now I think I have the right ending.
Interesting. Tell
Everybody
us
buy
tell us the most out
the
there version that didn't make it. Like, did she kill people? Was there a Kill Bill? Like everybody's bloody on the floor? Like, what's the craziest version that didn't make it?
The craziest version that didn't make it is, I have this thing every time I write a book, the editor looks at it and says, "The people are too mean." And I think to myself, I must come from some cruel family where I don't think this is too mean, but like everybody else thinks it's too mean. So that's one of the changes, the things that people were saying to each other. Like I toned it down, and it was better toned down.
So it's interesting because it sounds like your family's a little snarky maybe, but
Oh,
are they funny? Like is your
very
like
smart.
where does all this funny come from? Like where'd you get it from?
Well, when I was a kid, back in the Stone Age, when I had a pet dinosaur, um, you did not speak up like the way my children speak up. That didn't happen. You were seen and not heard. So the only way to get any attention in my family was to actually be funny about something. So I actually think that's where it started. But until this day, I will call my sister in the morning and we will chitty chat. And then before she hangs up, she goes, "Did we leave anybody out?" And that's our farewell. Also, my oldest daughter is a playwright and a television writer. So she writes all different things, but a lot of her plays have fantastic humor in it. So it just sort of runs in the we look at no matter the situation, we seem to overcome it by finding a side we can laugh about. And it could be a really bad situation, far worse than being left at the altar. But we always gather around and somehow find some reason to laugh, to find some joy in our togetherness.
Right. Like humor is a coping mechanism, right? It's a way of
Yes,
getting us through
without a
these
doubt.
situations that otherwise you're like,
Mhm.
how do you face that? So I love that. So thank you. I've always wondered what, I mean, I have the joy of being part of Blue Sky Book Chat with you.
Mhm.
And so we get to interact through that. And I've always wondered, for those not familiar, it's a group for readers. It's on Facebook. If you're listening to this on the podcast, I'll put it in the show notes so you can join if you're interested. But I get to interact with you, and I've always wondered, like, where does this humor come from? Because I could never be you, right? We all have our unique thing, and like your humor is so unique and it's so you, and I always wondered.
Thank you. Thank you. You made my day.
So I'm gonna quickly read a review, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
This is a beautiful endorsement from someone else who's been on the podcast, Maddie Dawson, who
Mhm.
wrote, among other things, The Magic of Found Objects. And listen to what she said about this book. She says, Crazy to Leave You is the funniest book I've read in practically forever. Lauren Leo, who's been jilted at the altar at 41, is sarcastic, lovable, brave, and drop dead hilarious. In other words, perfect. And as she makes her way through the humiliation of her post wedding world, not only does she have to deal with some pretty rough dieting decisions, but she's also got some needy sisters, a judgmental mom, a crazy work life, and way too many wedding presents to deal with. Plus, there's the really big question on everyone's mind: is anybody ever going to love her again? Trust me, this book will have you snort laughing from page one. Do not be drinking hot liquids while you read it.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you.
What a great, like, she got it. She
I
nailed it. And
know.
I love.
I couldn't have written a better one myself.
So, talk to me about advice for other writers. I think one of the things that's interesting that you've talked about in the past is you started as a writer, as an author, pretty
Mhm.
late in your own life. And
Mhm.
so, like, what advice do you give to people who want to write either funny books or just novels like you, or who are maybe starting late in life? Like, what advice do you give to other writers?
Well, when someone tells you at a party, I would love to write a book. When you say, "What do you do?" and I say, "I write books," and then they go, "Oh, I would love to write a book." You know that person's never writing a book. Because to write a book, you have to sit there and write the book. So my first advice to everybody who ever thought about writing a book is sit down and try writing. See how long you can sit there. Um, People don't realize the amount of work that each of the books that are published takes. You know, not just the first draft, which a lot of people think that's the book. They have no concept. I mean, when I wrote Lift and Separate, I thought I handed it in to the publisher and then we were done, except they were going to change my commas to ands or something. But as it turns out, no, as it turns out, there were a million things that had to be changed. That's number one is if you want to be a writer, you have to write. Number two, once you start writing, find a writer's workshop or somewhere you can try what you're writing out on, somewhere that'll help you belong to a community. I think belonging to a community of writers is really important. Even if you're working full time, three turkeys just ran across my yard.
You can't make that up.
I can't. I mean, should I catch them? I'll have dinner. Um, so, anyway, joining a community of writers in the sense of a writer's workshop, which you can easily find. I mean, you can find them online, you can find them at your library. The first one you go to may not be the one for you. It's sort of like looking for psychiatrists. Find your people while you're writing, and then I have to hand in something at a certain time. So it makes you less likely to procrastinate. So that's it. My two advices are if you want to write, write. And if you want to write and you're writing, join a workshop.
Great advice. And do you find that, like, as readers interact with your books, let me get this right. Is this your third one now?
Yeah, this is my third.
Third.
Mhm.
Okay. So do you find as readers are interacting with your books, and whether it's on Blue Sky Book Chat on Facebook or in book clubs, like, are there certain things that have surprised you about what readers ask or what they say about your work? Like, is there anything that, from where you started, you didn't necessarily expect?
I will tell my favorite story. My sharp object, who I've been married to for these 45 years, uh, was traveling around with me when I was doing a book tour, and my second book had come out, and he was just standing in back of the room. And
And
we get to
and for
Miami.
context, if the people haven't read it yet, it's called Husbands and Other Sharp Objects, okay?
Right. And in which the woman is trying to get a divorce from her husband while arranging a wedding for her daughter who's marrying his lawyer. Okay, so that's the premise of the book. And I'm actually married 45 years. So my husband is standing in the back of the room. He's not bothering anyone. He's not saying anything. A woman stands up and instead of turning to the front of the room, turns to the back of the room and says to my husband, Alan, I have a question for you. And no one has ever, he just like, we've been traveling for 3 months. No one's asked him a question. And he just looked at her and she said, what's it like living with Marilyn? And he looked at her straight on. This is in a room of 100 people and said, who's Marilyn? So
I love it.
That was the oddest question because I just didn't expect her to talk to
Yeah.
ask my husband a question.
Well, obviously, he's got as good a humor as you do, sense of humor as you do, because that's a brilliant answer. Who's Marilyn?
Yeah, I was shocked. I thought it was really good.
It's excellent.
But the humor, it's heartfelt too. I mean, it's I just think there's a lot of love in it.
Right. Yes,
Besides the
exactly.
laughter.
Well, I am so glad you've joined me today. I always like to wrap up by asking a couple of things. If people want to connect with you out in the world on social media, do you have any particular places that you hang out that they might find you?
Well, there's a bar on Route 44 in Avon. No, Facebook. I'm on Facebook. So please
Facebook.
friend me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but if you really want to have fun, come to Facebook and we'll have a party.
Yay. And also on Blue Sky Book Chat, where you and I both
Oh,
hang out
yes.
together. Yeah. And is there anything I haven't asked that you'd love to talk about or want to make sure you say?
No, I just want to thank you for inviting me. And even though I'm always very, very nervous that I'm going to blow up the computer, that didn't happen. So I thank you for your guidance.
And Crazy to Leave You is just out, I think, this week. So go
Tuesday.
check it out, folks.
Mhm.
Yeah. All the best, and thanks for joining me.